Welcome to another episode of We Don't Die. I'm your host, Sandra
Mm.
Champlain, author of the international best-selling book called We Don't Die: A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. And it's been almost 30 years since I first started researching the afterlife. And between my interviews here on We Don't Die and my All Things Afterlife show, Shades of the Afterlife, on iHeartRadio, I have over 800 individual episodes. So you know I'm somebody really passionate about giving you good reasons to believe in the afterlife, help through grief, and then tools as we're here living a human life. So that's a little bit about me. My website is we-don't-die.com. Lots of good things going on, always classes, our free Sunday gathering, inspirational service with medium demonstration included, and so much more. So now we're going to meet our guest, who is a mother, a best-selling author, a speaker, a coach who inspires audiences worldwide to navigate grief, healing, and personal growth. Over 2 decades ago, Melissa Hall faced the unimaginable loss of her young son that led her to the darkest depths of grief. But ultimately, she chose to embrace healing as an intentional, ongoing process. She transformed her son's absence into a guiding, uplifting presence and discovered that grief does not define us. The choices we make in its presence do. She's the author of a beautiful book called Dear Drew: Creating a Life Bigger Than Grief, and is here today to show us that healing is definitely possible and that love truly transcends death. You can find out more about her on her website, which is melissahull.com. Melissa, a warm welcome to you to We Don't Die.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you here, and good things take time. So I know we've been in contact for a while.
Yes,
Tell
we
everybody
have.
where in the world you're coming to us from today.
Today I'm coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina.
How nice. A big storm coming.
Big storm. It's actually very blustery outside. So there's been a few tree branches that have come down in the last few minutes. So it's definitely storming outside, but it's a nice change of pace from what I'm used to in Arizona.
Yes, definitely. And I'm north of you in a little state of Rhode Island. And so my mom and I
Oh,
are watching that storm coming up. So she's as
there
soon
you
as you're
go.
done, go outside and
Little known fact, I actually lived in Bristol, Rhode Island for a period of time.
it's a beautiful place and
Yes.
not far, half hour from here.
Okay. Very
Uh,
nice. I love Rhode Island.
I do too. All the water and trees and
Oh,
whatnot. Well, let's
the
talk about you. Everybody knows about me. Well, maybe not, but tell
Sure.
us a little bit about your background and then obviously your son, and we'll go from there because
Sure.
you are such a giver, helping people in so many ways, and I want to make sure we showcase that. But we'd love to hear your story.
Thank you. Well, my name is Melissa Hull, and I am the mother of three amazing children and the very honored stepmom of two boys. So my story with grief and bereavement began on the morning of May 19th in the year 2000 when my son Drew woke up very early and was excited to start the day. He greeted me with, Mama, Mama, the sun is up in the sky, which was the rule. We had a rule that he couldn't get out of bed until the sun was in the sky because Drew was one of those children that just could not wait to get going. He had so much exuberance for living. He just single day to get up and make the most of it. So on this particular morning, it was about 5:45, 5:30 in the morning. And his younger brother, Devin, who had asthma as an infant and toddler, had been just very, very sick. And so I was an exhausted mom that morning. And I thought, oh my goodness, I was so tired. But Drew was right. The sun was in the sky and I knew he was ready to start the day. So I woke up with him and I got him breakfast and I took him into the kitchen and he wanted either raviolis or ice cream. And so we went with raviolis that morning. And I got him started with that and I gave him a coloring book and some crayons and put on his favorite video, which was Thomas the Tank Engine, and said, Sweetheart, I'm going to go check on your brother. And as I went back, he said, Mom, he said, I already miss you. And I said, I'll be right back, sweetheart, I promise. And so I went back to the bedroom where Devin was still attempting to sleep, struggling to breathe. And I happened to just kind of lay beside him on my side just to pat his back to help to keep him just calm and let him fall asleep because he was just up the whole night. And I inadvertently fell asleep. And when I woke, I knew instantly that the house was too quiet. I instantly knew that I needed to find Drew. And as I walked through the house looking for him, he was not where I left him. He was not in the kitchen. He was not with his coloring book and crayons, and the video had stopped. So I thought, well, maybe he is just in his bedroom. And I began to look through the house. And as I went through the house and I'm not finding him in all of the usual places, my anxiety and my panic really started to set in. And at about this point in time, it's now been about 20 minutes. And so I'm really becoming very concerned. And I happen to notice that our back door, which was a sliding glass door was open, maybe about an inch. So he had left the door open and I thought, okay, great. He's just outside. And as I ran outside looking for him, calling for him, I couldn't find him. And it was about that time that I noticed that our dogs were running toward me as I'm calling for Drew. And they were running from the direction of a very large irrigation canal. And in Arizona, we use irrigation to bring water to the fields, and that's our major source of income in Arizona is agriculture. And so I'm in the middle of farmland, and I ran to this large irrigation canal, hoping and praying that my son was not there. But as I ran toward it, I could see his footprints leading to it. And as I approached that canal, I could see the evidence of where Drew had fallen in. There was a splash against it, and you could see where the embankment had given way under his feet. And I instantly knew that this was not good. I dropped to my knees and I started that conversation I think every parent has, where you begin to, plead with God, please God, don't let this be the case. Please let him be okay. Please let me find him. And as I was there praying and pleading with God, a gentleman drove by and asked if I needed help. And I said, yes, I did. And as the day went on, there was a host of people that came. There was the fire department, the sheriff's department, a search and rescue team, friends and family. And unfortunately, about 7 hours after I initially discovered that he must have fallen in the canal, I was told that they did find him and that he had passed. And my life was never the same. Um, from that point, I struggled with how to process such an immense loss. I struggled with the grief of in the guilt of having fallen asleep that morning, feeling quite responsible for what had happened to him. And it led me down this path of self-discovery, of forgiveness, and it ultimately led to my desire to share my experience with other people in various forms. I began talking about water safety education almost immediately. I went to preschools and I talked to young children and their families about the dangers of exposed irrigation systems in our community, which we have over 220 linear miles of open waterways. And so these canals run through the backsides of large neighborhoods, the backsides of elementary schools. They are literally everywhere. They are the danger in plain sight that we just don't think about. And so from there, I decided that I really wanted to share my story of recovery. And this is a process. So there are years that are going by. But as I'm going through this, I'm noticing that one of the things that I was craving was a sense of connection to people who had traveled this road of grief and bereavement. Um, I found that I was the recipient of kindnesses from parents who had gone through a loss of a child. And one particular woman, her name's Teresa, who wrote me a life-saving letter that I received probably about 3 months after the accident. It came at the most, I say divinely timed moment in my life where I was really struggling with the guilt and the sense of responsibility for what had happened. And I was struggling with this idea that maybe I didn't want to live through this either. Maybe I couldn't. I didn't know how to carry this weight. I didn't know how to carry the guilt. And her words changed my life. She was a mother who had also lost a child. The circumstances were eerily similar. She ran into the house to grab her purse. She left her daughter standing by a car. Something must have happened where her little girl ran into the road and was struck by an oncoming vehicle in her neighborhood. So she talked to me about the guilt that she struggled with and this idea that it made her irredeemable, which is exactly how I was feeling at that moment in time. And her words spoke to me in a way and it reached me in a different kind of place in my heart where clergy couldn't reach me, family couldn't reach me, my friends couldn't reach me. I needed somebody who had actually been through something so similar that I could believe her words because she spoke to me in ways that were true. She talked about the maddening guilt. She talked about the sleepless nights. She talked about endlessly replaying those moments over and over and over in her head, wishing and hoping that there was some way that we could get this magical do over, go back and change it or trade places so that her daughter would still be with her. And I was going through all of those same emotions. And the one thing that she said that really helped me in that moment is she said that I know that the temptation to never believe that life can be good is present. She said, but I want to remind you that joy and beauty and happiness are always here. We just have to find them differently now. And those words changed everything for me. It gave me hope in my bleakest hour. It it provided me just enough of this belief that maybe I too could travel this unthinkable, unimaginable new reality that I didn't want, that I wished I could give back, but also more importantly, that maybe my life would still be worth living. And her words in that letter transformed everything for me. And from that point, I started writing and I started sharing what this journey has been like. And that's ultimately where Dear Drew, Creating a Life Bigger Than Grief, originated from. I wrote Drew a letter every day for a year. And I pretended that at the time that he was like a Peter Pan, that he was this little boy that would never grow up. And he was off on this grand adventure and that he couldn't write me letters, but I knew he was out there just exploring this universe in ways that I could only imagine. But I knew that my imagination could help bring me some sense of connection to my son, and it did. For the longest time, it did. And then as I got stronger and as I became more able to handle the reality that he was not coming home and that he wasn't Peter Pan, I began to find myself again inside of this new life without him.
I just wanna give you a big hug. No matter how many years go by, it's right there, and no matter our beliefs, it's right there. But your words are so powerful because who's listening right now are people that have had that or similar loss, or even if it was a parent who was 90
Yeah.
years old, those bits of guilt, those things unsaid, those things undone are still there. So we human beings do the best we can in those moments. And so
Yes,
thank you for sharing that.
well, thank you. But the one thing that I will say is that I've never felt like Drew has been completely gone and out of my life. I have always felt his presence. And I know that that comes from love. And love is the one thing that never leaves us and it never dies. It transforms, but it never leaves. And my connection to my son Drew is real to me today as it was the day that he came in and was very excited to begin that morning. I still feel his presence. I still have a relationship with Drew in a real and meaningful way. It's not physical, but it is spiritual and the connection is very, very real to me.
Absolutely. I have
Yeah.
the blessing of interviewing so many people and doing my own research and studying all kinds of things. And they are real, they're alive, they're our biggest
Yes.
cheerleaders. We live in this illusion that heaven is out there somewhere beyond the clouds, And Melissa, I 100% believe we are living in their world. We are living, yeah, in their world, and we just have a short little piece of time here on Earth, and then we're all
Yeah,
connected again.
I would agree with you. Heaven has never felt like this far away place to me. Heaven and where Drew and my mom and my grandmother, all of my loved ones who have gone before me, I feel them in very real and profound ways where it's an undeniable truth for myself that we are much more connected to them than we realize. And the greatest way to feel and really amplify that connection is to remember the love and to really lean into it. I've come to understand that grief is not the absence of love. Grief is when we forget that love is still present and we choose not to lean into it. We mourn the love thinking that it's something in the past. But what I have discovered is that love is still here and they are still here. It's just about learning to reach for them and find them in a different and new way. And that is absolutely through the continuation of the love that he and I continue to share.
I wanna hear more about that and if there's been
Mhm.
any signs from him and your other loved ones, but I just wanna go back to your writing a letter a day.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
So many people that I've talked to, they call it inspired writing or automatic writing and acting as if they're writing to their loved one, but then all of a sudden, messages come through that aren't from them
Oh.
or, you get verifiable evidence, and it's like,
Yeah.
this really is them, and I can't help but think just that practice kept
Yeah.
not that the love would die, but just kept that communication open.
There have been so many moments where I have known for a fact that my son is still with me. I can cite, near, my mind might be elsewhere and I'm driving and I kind of forget where I'm going. And then all of a sudden I'll look up and it's like, Mama, I hear Mama. And then I'll look and I'll brake just in time to avoid missing a stop sign and running into a car. There are things like that. But then there are moments where I'll be sitting outside just thinking about him. And I've had hummingbirds come literally and fly right in front of my face looking at me. And I think, and I even say, "Hi, Drew. It's so good to see you." I thank you for sending me the hummingbird. And it happens with such regularity that it's undeniable for me. I will also tell you that there have been moments where I just can be writing and he'll remind me of a moment that was significant between us. And one of them when I was writing Dear Drew, and if you have a copy of the book, I start each chapter was in a little excerpt of one of those letters. Each chapter begins with something that I wrote to him. Dear Drew, I can still, remember the way that you would get excited when I took the snickerdoodle cookies out of the oven and you would wait for them to cool so you could eat the first one. Love, Mom. All of those little moments were contributing to this greater body of work, but I always started with the connection between the two of us as I began writing each new chapter. And it just felt like we were doing it together in this partnership. It was my story and it was honoring his life, but it was a work that was absolutely something that was a partnership. When I would be stuck and have writer's block, I would be just, asking Drew, what's the next thing that I need to say? And it would come. It would just come. But one moment in particular, I remember he was outside playing with Tonka trucks, the big Tonka trucks, the ones that you could push around. He loved to fill them with dirt and, make little forts. And he ran inside the house and he said, Mom, Mom, because I was cooking and I didn't give him my attention right away. So it was like, Mom. And he ran up to me and he grabbed my hand and he wanted me to get down on his level. So I got down on his level and he put his hand on my heart and he said, I will live there forever. And then he turned right around and went right back outside and played with Tonka trucks. And I thought, where does this kid come up with this stuff? But he was right. It was right. It was like he had this awareness that he had a brief period of time here on earth. So he had all this living to do, but he was wise beyond his years. And he would say things like that to me. so often. And that was a big part of what I would write to him. I wonder if that's what you meant that morning when you, or that afternoon when you came in and you put your hand on my heart and you said, Mom, I'm going to live there forever. Because it's true. You do live here. And it just reminded me in beautiful moments, in difficult moments, it's a reminder that that interaction between the two of us when he was just 4 years old that has sustained me, supported me, and inspired me for over 26 years.
It's beautiful. And out of it, you have made a difference for thousands of people and people you probably never meet through the work you've done, the words you've shared, being an advocate in Arizona for those waterways. So
Yeah.
sending you much love and
Thank you.
gratitude.
Thank you. I think what I have found is that some of the most generous people in terms of their time and their service of others have come from people who have lost sig- significantly, whether it be one child or more, whether it be through personal hardship and struggle. When you understand that your contribution will outlive your time here on earth, it's one of the easiest and most fulfilling things that we can do is to lean into being in service of others. And being in service of others is as simple as sharing your story, as being willing to listen, to be that empathetic witness to somebody else's pain, but also to remember that honoring your own gives people permission to honor theirs. And so being a living example of what is possible is important to me because I am the recipient of kindnesses from people who had traveled this road long before I did. And I cannot imagine what the outcomes would have been for me personally had they kept it all to themselves. And so, just like that letter from Teresa, a woman I've never had a conversation with, I've only read her letter a few thousand times, but her words have carried this presence and this wonderful gift of hope throughout this 26-year journey. And I want to be a voice, whether I meet people or not. That's not the goal. But if my journey and my experience can offer hope, if it can offer support, if it can allow them to be seen and witnessed in a way that feels meaningful and real to them, then by all means, it's the work I want to continue to do. It's 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 the whole driving force behind why I wrote Dear Drew, Creating a Life Bigger Than Grief, because I know that this is what I needed at different stages of my journey. And it is my sincerest hope that it will serve others in that capacity.
Well, we'll do our best to get it to a bigger audience by talking today. Would you tell us about your mom and your
Oh, sure.
relationship with her? I have my
My,
mom
yeah,
upstairs, and, moms
yeah.
are very special to us.
My mom is too. My mom is I'm sorry, I'm gonna get a little emotional. My mom was the epitome of grace and elegance. She was what I describe as the classic lady. She was kind, she was soft, she was, beautiful on the inside and the outside, but she just had a way of carrying adversity with such a strength and a will and determination that I am blessed to have witnessed because I've leaned into her example of resilience more times than I can count. My mom was diagnosed with cancer when I was 10 years old, and she had to leave our family to seek medical treatment in another state. She was living with her parents. And so at the age of 10, I was, left with this fear that my mom may never come home again because back then it was a very serious diagnosis. The prognosis was not good. But somehow, in some way, my mom defied all of the medical odds. My mom started off with a malignancy in her leg that spread to her lymph nodes. She was in remission, and then it reoccurred 5 years later in her abdomen. And then she had surgery and went through chemotherapy and radiation treatments and was healthy for about another 7 years. And then it came back um, in her brain. She had a brain tumor, and my mom collapsed on an airplane one day, and that is how the tumor was discovered. They had to make an emergency landing, and she f she was able to make it back to Phoenix, Arizona, where she had to have emergency surgery, and my mom went into surgery, one woman, and she came out somebody very different because of where the tumor was. It affected her memory, and so for the longest time, my whole family, my mom was kind of stuck in her teenage years, and so even though we were all adults and most of us were married, and had children, my mom only thought of us as though we were in high school. And so every time she would see her grandchildren, it was like meeting somebody for the first time. She didn't recognize my husband for quite a long time. When she might have moments of clarity, but for the most part, she kind of lived in another world. But my mom just was a fighter, and she knew at the time that she was in surgery with this brain tumor. We were told she had 1 year to live, and my mom went on to be part of a drug study where, in the interleukin 2 um, drug study, where she was the only surviving patient. And so my mom is in medical journals. My mom is she was followed by UCLA Medical and John Hopkins University for the longest time because my mom was literally a living miracle. There was no medical reason for her to be alive except for her will and her determination to live. She wanted to see my youngest sister, Carrie, graduate high school. My youngest sister, Carrie, is 10 years younger than I am. And so my mom just made this decision that she was going to withstand whatever it was that came her way with a combination of faith and grace and resilience that when I was going through my loss, I turned to. I followed that example. I made the decision that I was going to learn and grow and become better, not bitter. I was going to find a way to bring forth all of the beauty of what my life could still be because I saw my mom do it. I lost my mom about 8 years ago, and I miss her terribly, but I feel her presence and I feel her strength supporting me and guiding me every single day.
It's beautiful. And same thing, you feel her in your heart and you can feel that love relationship?
I do. And she's different. Drew's loud and my mom is subtle. My mom is very subtle. And the other person that I really feel a presence with is my grandmother. So my mother's mother, Dorothy. And she was this fiery little redhead. I'm about 5'2", but she had a force and a presence that she could fill a room. She just had a way of commanding life and making life work for her. And so I've had these examples, a very strong grandmother, a very soft mother, but both very, very, very resilient in their own ways. My grandmother had breast cancer when she was in her 40s, and that back then was, it wasn't survivable. She had a double mastectomy, and I remember as a kid, she had this bra that had breasts that were like inserts, so it would look like she had breasts, but she didn't. She had a double mastectomy, and I remember her talking to me, and I remember seeing her body as a young child and asking questions and not really understanding, but seeing her and hearing about the stories and hearing about just how hard that journey was for her. She too became this emblem of strength in ways that defied logic. And so I knew I came from a long line of women who could do the almost unimaginable. And so I too decided that I was going to continue that. And I'd never let anything, any life challenge, even the loss of my son, become the ending point of what I believe is still possible for myself. And so I have to give thanks and a whole lot of gratitude for both of those women, my grandmother, my mother. I'm so blessed by their life and their examples because it's given me the absolute assurance that I too can journey through the unimaginable and the unthinkable and come out the other side stronger and more connected to the love and the people that mean the most to me. And it's just helped me live a life that I'm truly happy inside of.
I'm so glad you're sharing all of them with us because you now embody them, and who you are for listeners is that strength. For the person who thinks they can't go on, they can. It's going to be hard, not going to be easy, but you
Yeah.
can. And out of it, you can make a difference. You can serve someone else. Just curious, because I know you say, you'll hear mama or something like that from
Yeah.
Drew.
Yeah.
Do you ever have just a memory or a thought from mom or your grandmother that just comes out of the blue and you take that as a little calling card that there you are, there you
Oh,
are.
yeah. Yeah. My grandmother used to say, Missy, nothing's as bad when you put on a little bit of lipstick. She used to she was a beautician, and she used to say, when life hands you lemonades, you meet it with grace, but with your best face forward. And so she always dressed like my grandmother always put herself together no matter what. And for whatever reason, that was something that I took away. Not that the image itself is what's important, but the claiming of like this declaration of I will be at my best in all things always. And for her, that was getting her hair done, putting on a little bit of lipstick, meeting the world with this elegance. And my mom carried it differently. My mom was very faithful. Her faith in in God was something that she really led with. And so I watched the how faith and prayer and that journey of having Christ in your life can also sustain you in ways that I wasn't necessarily real committed to at the time of Drew's loss. Although I had grown up around religion, it wasn't something that was a part of my life in a significant way until this happened. And then and I think this happens for a lot of people, we want answers. We want God to help us understand this, or we challenge God with, how could you do this? Why would you do this? How can you be a loving God and take this from me? Take it, my child, or take my health, or take my belief in you away. And I struggled with all of that. And then to understand that my journey inside of what my mom's example of faith has led to some of the most important aspects of who I am, which is very much a a spiritual person. I may express it differently than my mother, but it's a very real and present part of my life experience. I know that there is more beyond this earthly experience. I know it is clear as I know my name, and it's as real to me as the air I breathe. It's there. It's real. It's waiting for me, but it's also here now. And so it's given me this ability to understand that life is beautiful. Life is very beautiful. It's fragile for sure. And it's not guaranteed. It is definitely not a guarantee. But what awaits us is still beautiful. And I get to live this life with my children, and then I have the absolute gift waiting for me of that reunion with my mother, my grandmother, and my beautiful little boy, who I just cannot wait to be with again.
Thank you for sharing that. You got more work to be done.
Yes.
And wow. Tell us a little bit more about the book, Dear Drew, and if somebody is finding themselves in the depths of grief,
So
what's it?
dear
And then
y
also your website, because you have
sure.
a lot of resources there.
And that's very important to me to share those resources. Dear Drew is a collection of all of the best practices that I have tried. It's all of the discoveries, all of those gems that I've learned or gleaned from other people, or just doing the work of figuring out how to integrate love and grief in the same and hold that space together, because grief is still a part of my life, but love is a bigger presence. And where sadness is, so is beauty. And I have come to understand that I don't need to force grief and sadness out. I just need to remember that it is the shadow side of the beauty that remains. It's the beauty of those moments that I described as we began this conversation, where I can literally recall Drew getting so excited about the snickerdoodle cookies, which are both of our favorites. It was my favorite, it was his favorite. And just I can see that sparkle in his eyes. And as I remember that, I'm connected to him in a very real way. And so I wanted to share all of those connections, those touch points, because as I in the beginning years, I really struggled to find them and then to sustain them. And so this is all of the best practices and all of the work and discoveries that I've made along the way. And I have studied everything under the stars. I studied aura personalities to understand light and the light that we emulate, and what that means in my life and in the lives of others. I've studied pranic healing. I've studied Reiki. I became a Reiki master. I've then turned to energy healing, and I studied the healer's blueprint with Tam Pendleton. And it is all about cellular release and really working with the subconscious mind to allow ourselves to heal and to allow ourselves to, to align with all that we still hold dear and true and what we want for ourselves in the future, and not be so tethered to the past through that energetic exchange of the traumas that we've experienced. From there, I studied heart centered coaching with Robin Johnson at the Heart Coach Institute, and I became a master coach. I have really spent time understanding not only how to support myself, but how to be in support of others, because it was important to me to give my best to those people who I knew needed the best of me because they weren't at theirs. And so it's been a lifelong journey of study. And I took everything and I put it into a book, kind of a guide. I talk about my journey. I talk about Drew. I talk about the challenges that I went through along this 26-year experience of bereavement and grief. But I also talk about the things that really brought joy and beauty and harmony and connection back when I felt like I had lost them. I give people tangible steps. Every chapter concludes with what helped me practices. And so I give people tangible things that they can implement today in order to support themselves. It's a book that I wish that somebody had handed me 26 years ago. And it is my hope that it will be in service to those today and far into the future.
It certainly will. And what can we find on your website,
So,
melissahall.com?
yes, on my website, you're going to find water safety education resources. You're going to find the living library, which are all of the kind of the worksheets, the journaling prompts, the healing scripts, the meditation practices that I have used in order to move through and with my grief. Um, it's not that I've ever felt separate from it, but I have not felt limited by it. If anything, I felt more inspired by the pain that I have gone through, because it became a part of me, just like my hair is blonde, my grief is real. So it's just something that is me. It's a part of me, but not a negative part of me. It's just a different experience. I always say that grief is the one person that never gets invited to the dinner party. Nobody wants to sit next to grief. Nobody wants to talk to grief. Nobody wants to acknowledge grief. But I have found that by sitting with grief, leaning into what it has allowed me to learn, not only about myself, but about life and the afterlife, it has become one of the most beautiful teachers that I have ever come to know. I value my grief. I love my grief because of what it has allowed me to become. The woman I am today is because, not in spite of, but because of everything that I have gone through. And I can only ever be grateful because I love my life today. And you're going to find all of those resources there on my website, melissahall.com.
Powerful words. I've never said I love my grief. A lot of people want to push it away, but even looking at my life, I wouldn't be here with you today without my grief and my journey. So, yeah, keep grief a friend and don't push it away. It's part of us.
Yes. Let it be the teacher it's meant to be. Let it be that gorgeous difference in who you become, because grief has a way of really bringing meaning forward. It makes everything very clear. What's important, what is not, who is important, who is not. What you spend time, lamenting over, and what you let go of. Grief is a beautiful teacher when we really sit with it. And I always say, invite it to the table. Stop running from it. Let it become the person that you want, or the thing that you want to understand better, because inside of that experience comes so much clarity about who you are and who you can still be. And then you have to make the difficult choice to actually do it. Grief will give you the answers, but you have to be ready to take them and then carry them forward. And that's the one message inside of Dear Drew that I think is unique and different from any other book that I've ever read, and why I felt it was important to share my story and my perspective with the world.
Thank you for that. I just got the image. You know, Leonardo da Vinci's The David, that big
Yes.
sculpture?
Yes.
I just thought every strike of the hammer and the
Yes.
blade can be like grief, and it hurts, but out of it, something can arise, something beautiful. And your beauty is being of so much service to so many, being that strength, being the Teresa for people you'll never ever know.
And that is my greatest honor and my absolute desire to continue to hold that space.
Thank you. Before we leave to today,
Mhm.
what's something people can do if they're in grief right now? What is one of those tangible things that can keep us busy, or something we can do? Do you have a tool?
I always I have found that a 15-minute connection, remembering the love that remains, remembering the joy and the beauty that they blessed our lives with, is one of the fastest ways to elevate our emotions from despair into gratitude. And gratitude is one of the greatest gifts that I think grief has given me. I'm grateful for the 4.5 years. Do I wish that I had more? Of course. But I would never, ever, ever think to be so foolish as to not be blessed by the 4.5 years that I had with him. And so I lean into remembering all of the beauty, the moments like with the snickerdoodle cookies, or him running in with the Tonka truck, or playing with the Tonka truck and putting his hands on my heart and saying, Mama, I'm going to live there forever. That is one of the fastest ways that I have found that grief can dissipate and joy and beauty can return, because it's about the connection. And really, it's about remembering the love that still remains. That is not gone. It is not gone. It is ever present. And we just have to be willing to lean into it and allow for it to become a greater presence than the pain of their absence.
Thank you. And not only is that a tool for grief, but just recently, I've got some great medium friends connecting with our own loved ones, having that
Mm.
quiet time, that meditation, if you'd call it, taking a walk down memory lane, building up those feelings of love and the memories. And some are very happy and funny. And then just asking your loved one to come forward, and how interesting that you might get goosebumps on the side of your body or on your head or wherever, and just to feel their presence. So it's a wonderful practice of connection too.
Yes.
Any closing words for our audience today, Melissa?
Mm. If you find yourself struggling with grief, please know that this journey is not meant to be walked alone. We need each other, and we need to remember that connection, even when we feel like we want to isolate, is one of the most beautiful gifts that we can give our grieving hearts, is to find somebody who can hold that space with you, somebody who can be with you inside of the worst of times and the best of times. Find that person, lean into it, find the resources that help bring you clarity inside of this confusion. And I hope that my website, my book, and that the community that you can find and surround yourself within will provide you that place where you're not only seen, that you're supported and you're encouraged and loved.
Melissa, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you for having me. This was a wonderful conversation. I feel very honored to be here. So thank you.
You are most welcome. And for our listener, please check out Melissa's site, melissahall.com, and her book, Dear Drew, Creating a Life Bigger Than Grief. I also want to remind you that there's a great organization called helpingparentsheal.org with tens of thousands of members all over the world. And one thing they do have in common, yes, is they have a child who's passed, but they also are one organization that wholeheartedly believes in the reality of the afterlife. They have tools through grief. They have a wonderful YouTube channel and a great organization, really wonderful people. And come visit me, we don't die.com. I was thinking of Melissa sharing Drew and her mom and her grandmother, and I get to witness so many wonderful medium demonstrations on our free Sunday gathering. And sometimes we have that time where a loved one brings in a child or someone else or the dog. It's really wonderful that our loved ones are all together. They continue to learn and grow and explore and have fun, but they're always just a breath away from us. They can multitask. We'll figure it out someday when we get there, but they are
Mhm.
absolutely parts of our lives. So that's we don't die.com. You can find out more about me and past episodes, etc. So in closing, my name is Sandra Champlain. I'm always so happy to be your host on We Don't Die. I do believe that life is an education for the soul and that your life here is important. You may wish to start writing those letters to your loved ones, just knowing they are still around and you are very, very deeply loved. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.